911 operators of Reddit. What was the most petty call you have ever received? Once got a call about a stolen matchbook from the caller's front porch. Ashtray and cigarettes were left under shade. Caller was so worked up and concerned about a prowler that I sent an officer over. Matches were located in the garden where they had fallen over the railing. Caller immediately demanded the officer leave the property. 911 operator here. Honestly, 90% of what we deal with is petty. Things that I would never think to call 911 People are calling. My brother threw a tube sock at me. My neighbor is mowing his lawn. He's doing it to annoy me. It's 11 AM on a Saturday morning. My son brought his girlfriend over. I don't like her. Can you remove her from the house? Ma'am, is she being threatening or violent in any way? No, I just don't like her. Those are some of the more memorable from the past week or so. Honestly, if it's something you're interested in, see if your local 911 dispatch center will allow you to sit with a dispatcher. It'll be enlightening to what we really have to deal with. County 911. Where's your emergency? My neighbor is mowing his yard in pajamas. And I don't think that's very necessary. Excuse me, ma'am, is he threatening you or harming you? No, but he's nearly nude mowing his yard. Can you get a cop here to tell him to put clothes on? How about I'll let an officer give you a call about it, ma'am? Sure, that'll be fine. I'm tired of seeing old shirtless men mowing their yards early morning. My number is blah blah blah. Okay, I'll give this to the officer directly. Hangs up. Me on the radio. County 911 to North County. 939 go ahead. Have some telephone traffic regarding a shirtless old man mowing his yard. Subj is requesting you to give her a call. Sensible laugh over radio, sure thing. I am ready to copy. Give him her number. 5 minutes later. 939 to County 911. Go ahead. It's gonna be a civil matter. She told me she's going to start mowing her yard naked. I'll be 10 to 8. Me. In tears of laughter 10-4. 1432. Our CAD is being updated and this happened when I couldn't send texts over the CAD software itself. Otherwise I would just thrown the comment in the narrative and he cold read it. Fun times. That would be the one that got me fired. Actually they let me resign, but it's essentially the same thing in this case. A woman called in a man walking down the street in her neighborhood. Not being loud or suspicious or disruptive in any way, just walking along the sidewalk. Ma'am, what exactly is the problem then? If he's just walking down the street, well he just shouldn't be walking here. They have no business in our neighborhood. So she called the police on 911 and not the non-emergency line because a black man was minding his own business walking down the street. She just kept saying he shouldn't be walking here. And eventually I snapped back with, would you feel better if he was running? It's one of those moments where you immediately think, damn, now I have to find a new job. Not a 911 operator, but I do mapping for 911. An operator had a call once from someone that was extremely concerned that emergency services wouldn't be able to find his house if he ever needed them. Not a reason to call the emergency number, but still a valid concern. The call gets kicked over to me, and I'm on the phone with him going through a checklist to verify the location of his address. I ask him a few times what prompted his concerns about emergency services not being able to find his house, and he just mumbles something like, I just know they won't. I eventually get things worked out. His address is in our system and in the correct location, and I assure him that we will be able to find his house. There's a few seconds of silence on his end. Then he says, well, if the police know where I live and can get here, why the fuck couldn't Pizza Hut find my house last night? He hung up before I could respond. I work at an R&D. We received a patient who arrived by ambulance because of a bite on his foot, which he suspected might come from a venomous spider/scorpion, etc. We live in a country where there are no venomous spiders or scorpions. Upon arrival, he realized that he'd have to wait for a doctor to attend to him, as he wasn't exactly prioritized in triage, so he left. Wow, such emergency. Almost all of them, honestly. The worst are the people who won't parent their fucking kids. The worst was probably when some cunt called because his kid wouldn't go to his room. There was also this guy who called regularly because of kids playing on four-wheelers. They were in a rural area with adult supervision, all the proper safety equipment, nowhere near the guy's house, and were breaking literally no laws. He called all the time, even after being advised to stop. Honestly, I hate that he was never fined or executed for it. Let's see. We also get a lot of suspicious person calls. It's always just a bunch of kids hanging out, the two black people in our area, or the two Sikhs, though the callers would say Muslims. Honestly, people are stupid. The job would have been infinitely easier if we could tell people that their call is fucking retarded, and if they would actually be punished for it. Not exactly 911 as this was in Australia, so it was 000. However, I spoke to some ambulance officers once and asked a similar question. Their response was, well, we once attended someone's house who called us because they had a nightmare. Had a good chuckle at that one. Not dispatch, but EMT. Worst call in this regard we ever had. My partner and I show up in the morning to find out we have a trainee on our shift. First radio during his EMT school. Cool. Nice kid. About 2 hours later, we get paged out for prostate problems. No further information. Alright. Fun. We show up at an assisted care facility, not full nursing home. Think more apartments that have a nurse on staff. Make contact with patient. I send the student to do vitals while I start questioning him. Is he having pain? Discomfort? More urine output? Less urine output? Funny feelings on urination? Discharges? Anything? All negative. Finally, I tell him I need some help. Why does he think he is having prostate problems? Well, it's Saturday morning, and he just watched a medical show that mentioned it's important that men his age get their prostate checked once a year, and it had been about 15 months since he had a prostate exam, and he called his primary care physician and couldn't get an appointment until Monday morning. In over 5 years of EMS, this is one of like 3 patients I ever tried to talk out of going to the hospital, but he wanted transport. So we did. We radio the hospital ahead when bringing in a patient. This is the only time I ever said, in front of the patient, I'm sorry for what I'm about to tell you. We get to the hospital, and as we are moving the patient into a bed, this older male nurse storms into the room and starts laying into me. Why? He thought I was joking when I called in the report. When I assured him that it was legit, he turned to the patient. I can't remember his exact words, but it was something like this. You actually called a motherfucking ambulance to bring your sorry ass into the emergency room for a fucking prostate exam that you couldn't wait 2 days for. The patient looked stunned, but nodded. The nurse turned to the tech that had entered the room. Get this fucking asshole a prostate exam and get him the fuck out of my ear. He then slammed down clipboard he was holding on the counter. As we were cleaning the ambulance, my trainee looked at me. Is it always like this? He asked, hope dying in his eyes. I clapped him on the shoulder. Welcome to EMS. Yeah, like Gingerska had said, it's hard to compare the pettiness and banality of most of the calls we deal with. What is more petty, a 32-year-old male who wants medics for toe pain, someone calling to get the batteries changed on their smoke detector, or a neighbor dispute over tree leaves? Who can say? One of my favorites was over dog poop. Neighbor 1 let their dog crap in neighbor 2's yard. Neighbor 2 went and picked it up and placed it in neighbor 1's yard. At this point, neighbor 1 called us to report watching this happen. Then, against the best advice I could muster, went outside to confront. Then I got to listen to them both yell at each other, threaten each other, and continue to hot potato the turd back and forth across their property line until police arrived. Another gem a few years back was a guy who stabbed his own mother with a fork for eating his hot pocket he had microwaved, and felt entitled to it. I think I may be one of these. I called 911 because there was a dazed bat in my yard flopping around in the middle of the day, and I was concerned it was rabid and didn't want the dog getting at it. They gave me the non-emergency number and a cop came over, scooped him up, and gently placed him in the woods nearby. I know I could have done the same thing, but I didn't want to get attacked or sick, and the officer was more than happy to help. Calling the cops was my last line of defense, but I had to due to the following. My town has no animal control branch of law enforcement. I was unable to find anything for neighboring towns either. All the third-party animal control services were either unresponsive or wanted an expensive premium. The non-emergency line number wasn't displayed on my town's website. Not the operator, but I have a relevant story. I was in the waiting room with a particularly bad kidney stone. I had already been there 3 hours and the waiting room wasn't really that full. I had already gone through triage, so I was wondering what the fuck. I go up to the receptionist type person and ask her how much longer it will be. She responds with, "Oh, you were next, but someone came in by ambulance with a sore throat." An ambulance for a fucking sore throat. It was at that moment I lost faith in humanity. Luckily I was called in about 10 minutes later, and 10 minutes after that I had my sweet downloaded. I remember hearing an audio recording on TV when David Cameron was still Prime Minister of the UK. Some old woman actually phoned 999 to ask the police operator to tell David Cameron he was doing a great job. The understandably irritated operator told the woman that the line was for emergency use only, to which the old woman responded by asking the operator if she could get her a contact number for the Prime Minister. Got a call once from a man about a noise complaint. Pretty standard stuff at first. But then a priority call came out, and the unit on the way to the noise complaint was pulled off to respond to the burglary in progress, i.e. Badger is still there. About 10 minutes later, we get a call from the same guy ranting and raving about why we aren't there yet. I tell him it's because a higher priority event has occurred that needed multiple deputies to respond. He says he doesn't give a shit, and that his call should be responded to first, because he called first. He then proceeds to call back every 5 minutes for the next 30 minutes or so until our watch commander that night keys up on the channel to say she'll be en route to the noise complaint. About 5 minutes after she arrives on scene, she keys up again with one in custody for abuse of 911. Released with a notice to appear, no jail ride. Some people. By that I mean most people. Also I like parentheses. 000 call taker here. I've lost my Foxtel remote, my air conditioner remote is broken. Can the police come and turn my bedroom light off? I don't want to get out of bed, I want to make a complaint against police. I was doing my neck exercises and they told me to stop doing it on the bus, and my all-time favorite caller was worried because someone messaged her on Facebook with the name Amin Yasht telling her to stop taking the piss of his name, and she was worried he was spying on her because she checked in at her shed, and that's not even mentioning the nuisance callers. When they call upwards of 100 times a day, some getting to around 1,000 calls a week. The list is endless. I write them all down and might write a book on it one day. Obligatory, not a 911 operator, but apostrophe. I called the police on my brother when I was 8 because he kept hitting me. Hung up when it rang the first time. BC, we both panicked. Neither of us realized cops can trace where a call came from until a cop showed up at our house and asked to search our house to make sure we weren't in any danger. He asked why we called, and my brother was like she was trying to call her friend and the number is really close. I've received countless, but my favorite is one my coworker took. City police emergencies. My neighbor's baby has been crying non-stop, and it's keeping us all up. Do you think it's in distress? No, it cries all the time, and I can see the mum on the balcony just having a smoke. Like, are we talking about neglect? No, I don't think so. It's just that the baby makes so much noise all the time. Well, what do you want us to do? Go over and put 3 rounds in it and punt it off the balcony? Well, really, think about it. What can the police do about a newborn? They make noise. They're babies. Mum's just probably exhausted and trying to get a break. Okay, I guess you're right. Have a good night, click. And honestly, to my surprise, the caller didn't make a complaint against her either. I'm not a 911 operator, but I have a story that fits here. Several years ago, shortly after I had moved into my current house, my neighbor at the time would get mad at me for letting my dog shit in his yard. Now, my dog only goes out in the front yard when I'm with him, and I keep him contained in my yard. Sometimes he sneaks a squat when I'm tending the garden, but I usually catch him in the act and use a leaf or something to toss the turd back into my yard. However, my backyard is fenced off by a wooden privacy fence which was in disrepair, so I figured my neighbor was complaining about my dog slipping through somewhere and pooping in their backyard. Fair enough, so I go through and repair all the gaps I can find with new boards, and all is well. Next day, I come home from work and my neighbor is complaining about dog turds in his yard again. I suggest it must be someone else's dog. He suggests I go fuck myself. Whatever, I've done my due diligence. I'm done with their dog shit. I wanna say it was about 2 to 3 days later that a cop knocked at my front door, holding a glad bag my neighbor had given him with a huge dog turd in it, and I mean huge, almost 2 inches in diameter. The officer explains that my neighbor was filing a nuisance complaint against me because I let my dog crap in his front yard and had been so kind as to provide this bag of evidence of my dog's wrongdoings. He had barely finished his introduction when my 11-pound Pomeranian finally woke up from his nap and came bounding to the front door to be petted by the owner of this new voice. I said something along the lines of, "Officer, if my dog left that, I don't think he would be able to walk right now." He laughed, petted my dog, and wished me a good day. Meanwhile, my neighbor's bull mastiff is raising hell in their backyard.